Hi everyone. In this video, I will explain the CSS selectors. What are the CSS selectors and type of the CSS selectors function? All right, so let's start with the introduction. So I'm going to open up my slides. What are CSS selectors? CSS stands for cascading style sheet. CSS selectors are used to style different elements of the HTML page. So in testing, we use CSS selectors to identify the web elements such as button or login button, username, password. We identify these web elements through CSS selector that we can perform some action on those. What kind of action? Like we want to have the Selenium to click on it, to drag and drop, and some other action. So in summary, you can say that CSS stands for the cascading style sheet that used to style different elements of the HTML page. All right. So, the basic format of the CSS is kind of the same as XPath that I covered XPath in my previous video. So what's the if you remember, for the XPath we use 2// and we use the what? We use the tag name, we use the bracket add, and we use what? Attribute, and then we use the value of the attribute, right? So this is the syntax for a relative XPath. But when it comes to the CSS basic format, this is kind of the same, but we don't use in CSS, we don't use the @ sign, and also we don't use the 2//. So you see that there are two differences. We don't use 2// when we don't use the @ sign. Other than that, it's kind of the same as a relative XPath. So based on this formula, based on this syntax, let's actually find a web element from this page. So let's do it. Let's say that I want to identify this username field, right? So, and I want to identify this by the ID attribute. I copy this. As I said, what's the basic format of the relative XPath? We use the tag name. So the tag name is here is input, right? We use the tag name, and we use the attribute, and then the value of the attribute. Of course, it is surrounded by single quotes, and then the bracket, closing bracket. So there you go. Now we just identified this element by using the CSS. Okay, so this is basically the basic format of the CSS selectors. And now let's move back to the slides. The first one of the CSS selector, we have the ID. All right, so there are actually three ways that we can identify the web elements with the ID and CSS. This was one of the way, right? We have the ID, we use the tag name, we use the bracket, we use the attribute, equal sign, and value of the attribute. What's the second way? You might ask, what's the second way? As I said, there are three ways that you can use the CSS selector to find the element. So let's say that this is the ID attribute. I copy this, and then simply I use hash sign, and then the value of the ID. So right now, see that? Let's say 101. This is also the same way. And there is another way, which is the third way. What you can do, you can use the tag name, then hash sign, and then the value attributes of the ID. So now I have what? I have only the tag name, because the hash sign is already there and username is already there. So totally, there are three ways that we can identify a web element by using the ID and CSS. One of the way is tag name, hash, and the attribute value. The second way is only the hash and attribute value. The third way, let me actually show you that a little quick, is input the tag name, then we use the ID and value of the ID. So there are three ways that you can identify web element by using the ID. Let's go back to our slide. So next we have class. To identify the class in CSS, pretty straightforward. Let's move back. Let me actually log into this website. So I'm going to copy the password. So it's already here. So this is the username, and I'm going to copy this, paste, right? So I'm going to demonstrate the class. So let's say this is the class, right? This is our class. And let's say that I'm going to copy, find this class, right? This is the tag is div. So let's say div, and then we have the what? Class, then value of the class. And right now we find the class. There are 6 classes, right? So also when it comes to the class, there are multiple ways that they can also find the class, right? This was one of the way. So you might ask, what is this is the first way. What's the second way? The second way is that you use the attribute value of the class, and then you simply use the dot, and then the value of do you see that? This is the same, 1 of 6 in this class. There are 6 of class, the same kind. And the third way, you can use the div, the tag name, right? You can use div dot and then value of the class. So this is the third way. This is also as ID. When it comes to the class, there are 3 ways that they can identify the web elements with a class. What are those 3 ways? You can use a tag name, dot, value, the attributes of the class, attribute value of the class. Then the second way is you use only dot and then attribute value of the class. And the third way is you use the tag names, then you use the bracket, you use the attribute and value of the attribute, and then the closing bracket. All right, so that's it about the class. Let's actually move to the next one. The next one, we have the tag name. So how we can identify the tag name, right? How we can identify the tag name. Let's say that if I want to know how many links are in this page, when it comes to the relative, when it comes to the XPath, we use 2/ and add, right? We have 20 links on this page, right? So in the same way, when it comes to the CSS, with the CSS, you don't use 2//, you use only the @ sign. So for some reason, it's not showing the link. Let's actually, so let's, I'm going to log in out of this page because I'm going to show you something in the next page. So when it, let's say that I want to know an XPath, we use 2//. I want to know how many input elements we have on this page. We have 3, right? So this is an XPath. How we can use it in CSS? In CSS, you don't need to use 2//. You just need to type the tag name. Now we have 3 input in this tag name. So how we can use the tag name in CSS? Only the tag name, that's it. How we can use an XPath? An XPath, we use 2// and then the tag name. All right, so let's move on from this and see what else we have on the list. We have the tag names, hash and ID. So we already covered that. As I told you, there are 3 ways that you can identify the CSS selectors by the ID tag and hash and then ID, and then also the basic format, which is the tag names, bracket, attributes, and value of the attribute. We already covered that. And class, also I cover this. There are 3 ways to identify the class in the CSS selector. And this is the first, this is the same as XPath, as I explained. We use the tag name, we use attribute, equal sign, and value of the attribute. I already covered this. Move on to the next one. Now, this is new child, right? We want to move to the child. All right. So when it comes to the child, how we can move to the child, right? So let's say that, again, I'm going to log into this page. I'm going to copy the password. Copy the password. We have the username and paste it. I'm going to log into this page. All right, so right click, inspect. All right, so let's say that I am on this page, right? I'm on this page. I am right here and this one. I copy this. I want to identify this element. Control F. So what I can do div, then I have the what? I have the ID, right? ID. And I paste this value and then this one. All right, so there are two of these. There are two of these if I want to stay on the first one, right? If I want to stay on the first one. So let's actually move to this root. So let's switch that elements with the root. I just need to paste that. Now we got the root, right? We got one root. Now it has a lot of children, right? So when it comes to the children or child in CSS, we use a greater sign that's used to refer to the direct child. For example, if I say greater sign and then div, you see that? It selects directly the child that comes under this root. So this is the direct child of this root. How we can select the subchild or grandchild and grandchildren? Then in that case, you just need to have a space. For example, space and then div. Right now, this one has 71 children, right? 71 children. So in summary, you can say that greater sign direct child. If you want to move to the descendant or grandchildren, then in that case, we can use the space. All right, you can use the space to move to the other child. All right, so then we have this one is actually the space is used for the subchildren or many children, grandchildren. The greater sign is used to the direct child. There are two. These two are very effective if you want to move to the children. For example, if an element has many children, you can use n-child. Let me actually show you to move to that children, right? So let's say that I want to go over here, right? And I want to let's say I want to identify this element. And I can say that div ID, and I can select this one, right? So I can select this one. Let me actually see this. All right. So right now, let's say that there are two of them, but I want to select, let's say I want to select the first one, right? How I can select, or I want to select the second one. I want to select the second one. So this one, the other one. In that case, I had colon, then n of type, then the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, it's like an index, right? We can say index 2. Then in that case, I select 2. If I say select 1, then in that case, it select the first one, right? So right now, this one has children, right? So let me see how many children it has. Space div, right? It has a lot of children, 49 children. If you want to select whatever the specific children, in that case, you can use colon n dash child, and then you use the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, you can specify, for example, let's say children number 3. Then in that case, you can select whatever children inside the inside that n child that you want to select. So n child in summary is used to select which number of the child that you want to select. For example, if there are 5 children, you can select first one, second one, or third one. You can use this n child to select the children. All right, so I'm going to log out again. So let me actually show you how we can use again the end of child, right? End of child. So let's say that here I want to identify this element. How I can identify this element? I can use div, then I'm going to use class, an attribute of the class. So this one has a 2, right? So I want to select the first one, then you can use colon n of dash type parentheses. Now inside the parentheses, you can select which one you want to pick, 1 or 2. You can, if you look at this, they are the same level, right? They are the same level. You can use to select this element, right? You can use to select this element. In the same way, sibling, how we can select sibling in CSS, right? How we can select sibling in CSS. So right now, we are right here, right? Let's say that. So first of all, we want to understand what is the sibling, right? Siblings are the newts that they share the same parent, or they are at the same level. If you look at these two, they are actually the same level, right? They are the same level and they have the same parent. This div is the parent of this, and this div also the parent of this one. So how we can move to the sibling in CSS? In CSS, if you want to select to move to the sibling, you use the plus signs, and then you use the tag name. There you go. So now we move from here to here. Plus sign is used to move from the, is used to select the element that's sibling from one element to another, from one sibling to another sibling. All right. So we covered this too. Now let's actually see what else. Also, as I said, the plus sign is used to select the sibling, right? I'll just show you that. So let's move on. Then we have the what? We have the start with. Start with, we have in XPath, we have a function called starts with. And the same way in CSS also we have, but in CSS a little different. In CSS, it is represented by this caret sign. It's called caret sign. All right, let me actually show how we can use this one. So let's move to, so let's say that, I want to identify this username, right? I want to identify by the username. Then how I can use that in CSS? So the tag name is input, right? Then we use the ID, and we use the caret sign, which saying that it starts with. And then I'm going to paste that value, right? And bracket. So now you might ask a question, in what scenario we can use this starts with or caret sign? So let me actually show you that. So let's say that there is an application, right? This application, we want to identify this username field. We want to identify this web element, but the problem is that the ID, let's assume that the value of the ID is not stable. It dynamically changes. It keeps changing, right? So now we assume that the user is always the same. This portion is always the same, but the name keeps changing whenever you refresh the page. For example, this name becomes 1, then when you refresh, it becomes 2, 3. So this value changes, but this one doesn't change. So in that case, I can select only this one. And now what the CSS starts with is not, it doesn't care about what's this value. It's not gonna, as long as the user has stayed the same. This is a static. So we can actually set our condition only to that user. We don't care about this one because this one keeps changing and it's useless. So we ignore that. Then in that case, we can actually use only a portion of that value, not the entire value. So in that case, I can say only the users and bracket, right? So we can actually use this one to identify by the only by the users, not the entire value. So in the same way, let me show you the contain. We also have a method in CSS that's called contain, the same as XPath. So that's also represented by the asterisk. So you see that by the asterisk. The contain is also the same way as starts with. As I told you, some portion of the value is static. I'm pretty sure that you might come across this, but the other portion, it keeps changing because they are auto-generated by the system. Then in that case, if it happens something like that, you can extract the static portion and use that with the contain or starts with method. Then in that case, you will be fine. Okay. And let's the last one actually, it's called ends with. Ends with let me actually show you how we can say. So let's assume right now that on the opposite of the last scenario, right now we can say that we are going to assume that this name is the same, right? This name is the same, but this username keeps changing whenever you refresh the page. For example, user 1, user 2, user 3. Then in that case, what you can do about this? You can actually there is a function in CSS. So let me actually show you. Input, then we have the ID, and we have the dollar sign. Dollar sign here means ends with. Ends with, and what's the value? The value is name, right? So the value is name. Here we can say that as long as it ends with a name, it doesn't care about these usernames. So the username, because the username keep changing, but this name is static. It's always the same. So with the ends with method, we can tell the Selenium that don't care about whatever the value of the user is. Don't care about that. Just cares about only about that name. So in this scenario, you can use the ends with function, which is very effective sometimes in CSS. All right, so let's see what else we have on the list. This is also, as I say, dollar sign is used with the ends with. We cover that, and the last one is contain. Contain is also represented by the asterisk or a star. That's the last slide. I think that's it about the CSS. That's it about CSS. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'm gonna see you in the next one. Thank you.